Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers to celebrity memoirs, news, business, and self-development. Every month, members get 1 credit to pick any title, plus 2 Audible originals from a monthly selection, and access to daily news digests from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as guided meditation programs. Between a full-time job in IT and a full-time job in podcasting, it gets harder and harder to sit down and read the books I'm interested in. This is where Audible comes in. I can listen on my daily commute, relaxing, or while out running errands and still get in the books I've been wanting to get into. You can download titles and listen offline anytime, anywhere. The app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. Now you can try Audible risk-free with a special 30-day free trial by visiting audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. That's audibletrial.com/nerdery and murdery. Don't let your busy life get in the way of that great book you've been wanting to read. Go get your free trial of Audible today. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is Geoffrey, and we've talked about many times before that I experience problems and struggles with my mental health. And really, without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy does work. It's helped for me, but what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, or you're not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's really time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles, and it's time to start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is a customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are your greatest asset. And there's a special offer to Nerdery and Murdery listeners. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. That's betterhelp.com/nerdery and murdery. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
Hi, Buck.
You're an idiot. Welcome to episode 46 of Nerdery and Murdery.
46. I'm Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery.
How you doing today?
I am doing great. I'm looking forward to this week's episode. I know what the subject matter is on the Nerdery side. I'm very, very much looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to the Murdery side as well. Just a peek behind the curtain. This is one of the first episodes I ever thought about covering for myself.
Oh, cool.
And it's been requested by multiple listeners that I cover this episode, or cover this story. So this will be a good week for us. So
nice.
I'll go ahead and let Zig let you take over on the Nerdery side of the house.
Well, awesome. Today, we're going to talk about Buck Rogers in the 25th century.
And so we're talking about the TV series, not going all the way back to the comic book or the original serial.
No, we're not talking about the original serial. We can, but most of my notes are on the television series.
No, and I think that's great. I actually, as I was thinking about this, I really kind of have to give my mom a lot of credit for my love of sci-fi because she took me to see Star Wars in the movie theater, Battlestar Galactica, Moonraker, and Buck Rogers in the 25th century.
Love Buck Rogers. You know, the theatrical film was actually pretty good.
I loved it. I actually watched the first few episodes within the last few months.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I love that TV. As cheesy as it could be at times, Buck Rogers was a not missed TV show for me.
Yeah. No, no, and cheesy and yet and some of them were exceedingly frightening.
Oh gosh, yes.
Space Vampire.
Space Vampire is to this day one of the scariest things to me on TV because that vampire was just horrifying.
Yes, I've gone back and watched it recently. That's not a bad makeup job.
No, and we've talked about that before too.
So a little background. Buck Rogers in the 25th Century is an American science fiction adventure television series produced by Universal Studios. The series ran for 2 seasons between September 1979 and April 1981 on NBC. And the feature-length pilot episode for the series was released as a theatrical film before the series aired. The film and series were developed by Glenn A. Larson and Leslie Stevens, based on the characters Buck Rogers created in 1928 by Philip Francis Nolan, and had previously been featured in comic strips, novellas. There was a film serial, television, and radio. They were inspired by the success of Star Wars, as many people in the late 70s were. Universal began developing a Buck Rogers for television, spearheaded by Glenn Larson, who had a production deal with the studio. The production began in 1978. Initially, Larson and Universal had planned on making a series of Buck Rogers TV movies for NBC, much in the same vein that Glenn Larson had originally decided to do Battlestar Galactica.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of doing a series, just make them little movies. The pilot for Larson's other science fiction series, Battlestar Galactica, had been released theatrically in some countries and in key locations in North America, and had done well in the box office. So Universal opted to release the first Buck Rogers TV movie theatrically on March 30th, 1979. Good box office returns led NBC to commission a weekly series, which began on September 20th, 1979, with a slightly modified version of the theatrical release. Now, I would like to set the stage for this. Imagine being a kid in the late 1970s. So you go to the movies every few weeks. You've got Star Wars, which they re-released before Empire Strikes Back. You had Star Trek the Motion Picture. You had this. You had Battlestar Galactica. All of these films came out within about a year of each other. So every month or so, you got a science fiction film at the movies. So it was, it was heaven for young science fiction fans. As Geoffrey alluded to earlier, it's like you think, oh, your folks took you to all these. Yeah, our folks took us to all of these, and they were all within like a year and a half period.
Yeah, and that amazes me to think about that they were all so close because, I'm trying to think back.
Alien.
Oh yeah, Alien. I'm trying to think back, 40 plus years. It seemed like there was a lot of time between all these, but when you bring that all together, it's like, wow, those are all just right there all together.
Oh yeah. And for 4 or 5 years, we would get this stuff every few months. We'd have something else. It'd be, a new Star Trek film, or, a new Star Wars film, or another science fiction film, and it was really amazing. It was a great time to be. It was a great time to be an elementary school kid who really liked science fiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, circling back, the production recycled many of the props, effect shots, and costumes from Battlestar Galactica, which was still in production at the time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's mostly the sets. Look at the background sets. They dressed them up a little differently, but a lot of the stuff you saw in Battlestar Galactica, especially the stuff on the Searcher, it's all those old Battlestar Galactica sets.
Yeah, I can see that with Searcher. Yeah.
And it was still being filmed at the time. The Land Ram vehicle made for the Galactica series and the control sticks used in the Terran starfighters in the pilot movies were the same as those used in the Galactic Vipers. Same flight controls. I want to say the inside of the starfighter was the same basic set. It was just the exterior that was different. And they were probably built on the same frame.
Yeah, and honestly, if you were to ask me, pick one, the Colonial Viper or the Earth Starfighter. I'm going that Earth Starfighter.
Yeah, the Thunder Fighter.
The Thunder Fighter.
Because you found that a few weeks or months ago now.
Yeah. I'm going with the Thunder Fighter because I just always thought that was a cool ship.
Oh, yeah. The Terran Starfighters were the original concept design Ralph McQuarrie had for the Colonial Vipers.
Nice.
So they just basically recycled that design.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the new series centered on Captain William Anthony Buck Rogers, played by Gil Gerard, a NASA/U.S. Air Force pilot who commanded Ranger 3, a spacecraft that's launched in May of 1987. Due to a life support malfunction, Buck is accidentally frozen for 504 years before a spacecraft is discovered adrift in 2491. The combination of gases that froze his body coincidentally comes close to the formula commonly used in the 25th century for cryopreservation, and his rescuers were able to revive it. He learns that the civilization on Earth was rebuilt following a devastating nuclear war, which they eventually established as occurring on November 22nd, 1987. It is now under and Earth is now under the production of the Earth Defense Directorate. So he left in May of 87, and we had a nuclear war in November of 87.
Right.
Just to kind of give it a timeline background. The series followed him as he tried, and not always successfully, to fit into 25th century culture. As no traceable personal records of him remained, he was uniquely placed due to his pilot and combat skills and personal ingenuity to help the Earth defense foil assorted evil plots to conquer the planet. In many respects, this version of Buck Rogers was more similar to James Bond or Steve Austin than Nolan's original character.
Right, because they wanted him to be a spy.
Yeah,
and he didn't want to do that.
Yeah, no, but that's basically what he was until the Searcher series.
Right.
Buck would often go undercover on covert missions. He was aided in his adventures by friend and sometimes romantic interest, Colonel Wilma Deering, played by Erin Gray.
Who didn't have a crush on her?
Yeah. Erin Gray and Linda Carter were every boy's dream in 1987. Or, I'm sorry, 1978. I apologize.
Yeah.
A high-ranking officer in Starfleet, a starfighter pilot herself. Buck is also assisted by Tweaky, a small robot, or ambuquad, as they were known. Tweaky was played mainly by Felix Silla and voiced mostly by Mel Blanc, who had previously voiced Daffy Duck as Duck Dodgers in the spoof of the early Buck Rogers science fictional series. He used a gruff voice similar to the one he used for Barnyard Dog, D-A-W-G. Tweaky became Buck's comic sidekick and communicated with an electronic noise that sounded like beady, 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 but also spoke English.
Yes, would occasionally throw words in there too.
Yes. Tweaky's English usually consisted of 20th century slang that he learned from Buck. Also aiding Buck was Dr. Theopolis, or Theo, voiced by Eric Server, a sentient computer in the shape of a disc about 9 inches wide with an illuminated face, who was capable of understanding Tweaky's electronic language. So Dr. Theopolis was basically the C-3PO character to Tweaky's R2-D2 character.
Well, except Dr. Theopolis belonged to a sentient group of these type of robots,
Yes.
not automatons, but robots that were the council for Earth. They were the ones who made decisions.
Yes. So Dr. Theopolis, working with Buck, basically got Buck a direct line to the ruling powers of the Earth Defense Force. Now, during that was Dr. Theopolis was during the first season. I don't think Theopolis was in the second season.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, it was just Tweaky. Well, it makes sense. He had to stay back and be part of the ruling council.
Mm-hmm.
During the first season, Buck and Wilma took their orders directly from Dr. Elias Hewer, played by Tim O'Connor, the head of the Defense Directorate. Some episodes suggested Hewer was the leader of the entire planet, though it was never made completely clear. Yeah, you know what? I think they kind of went back and forth with that because in some cases, Dr. Hewer was deferent to Dr. Theopolis, and in some cases, it was the other way around.
Well, but Dr. Hewer was deferent to the council.
Yes.
The
Yes.
council actually made the decision. So he wasn't really the lead. The council was.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But in some cases, they would write it where he would just kind of go off on his own. But, having a member of the council on your team probably didn't hurt either.
Right.
The series chief villain, at least in the first season, was Princess Ardala, played by Pamela Hensley, whose goal was to conquer Earth while making Buck her consort. She was aided by her henchman, Kane, played in the pilot film by Henry Silva, but in the series by Michael Ansara, the great Michael Ansara, who also shows up in Babylon 5, in Star Trek, oh my God, he was incredible. Love Michael Ansara.
Oh, and she also had her bodyguard, Tiger Man.
Who in the movie Buck kills, but in the series they changed that scene up where he didn't kill him; he just disabled him.
Right.
Quick side note: Michael Ansara, I believe this is correct, was married to Jeannie.
Oh, Barbara Eden.
Barbara Eden, thank you. Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, back in the '60s and the early '70s. All these characters were featured in the original comic strip, except for Dr. Theopolis and Tweaky, whose closest counterparts in earlier versions would likely be Buck's human sidekick, Buddy, and Kane, or Killer Kane, was also featured in the 1939 film Serial. He was actually the chief villain rather than Ardala's henchman. Ardala did not appear in the film series. Now, I'd like to talk about Pamela Hensley and some of her outfits as Princess Ardala.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah. She was lovely. I liked that she played a very strong woman because she was the leader of her people.
Right.
My problem with that whole group of people, the Draconians, they never said whether or not they were human or not.
I believe, if I recall correctly, they were a splintered off
colony.
Colony that ended up expanding on their own. So I think they were originally from Earth.
Yeah, me too, because they were kind of obsessed with taking over Earth.
Yes.
To expand their empire to take over Earth. Again, played by the lovely Pamela Hensley. She would wear these outfits that
left little to the imagination. To be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I remember thinking of one particular one where it was basically a diamond bikini.
Yes. Now that was from the movie. When she showed up to the ball in the diamond bikini.
Designed by Bob Mackie, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that was a Bob Mackie. Like some of the stuff that Cher wore back in the 80s.
Well, and Princess Ardala was meant to exude sex.
Yes.
She was meant to be an object of desire. That was a lot of the point of who she was and that she was able to not really mind control, but kind of mind control men and make them follow her.
Yes. And they did.
Yes. Buck had a thing for her.
Yes. Well, she had a thing for Buck, but she wanted him to be her love slave. And
yes,
Buck was not about that. Now, the pilot film depicted human civilization as fairly insular, with an invisible defense shield that surrounded the entire planet, protecting it from invaders. Civilization was restricted to a few cities. The main city seen in the pilot and weekly series was New Chicago, which was also known as the inner city. Travel between the inner city was hazardous, as much of the planet was said to be radioactive wasteland inhabited by violent mutants, as Buck discovered when he visited the derelict remains of old Chicago. Basically, in the movie, he went to go visit his parents' graves, and he got attacked by mutants, which the Defense Force had to come and save him from
That was part of the storyline that as an adult has always bothered me too. He knew that old Chicago was out there, and yes, he knew that everybody he knew was dead.
Yeah.
But unless his parents died before he left,
there wouldn't be graves for them.
Well, not just that. How did he know which graveyard? This is Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't think there is one cemetery in Chicago.
No.
So that's something that's always bothered me as an adult, because he knew exactly where to go to. Because as he's running through the streets of Chicago, he comes to a street sign and realizes, oh, I'm close to the cemetery I'm looking for. Or maybe
he looked it up beforehand.
Maybe he was able to find that. That's never really been clear in the movie.
Well, and the whole wasteland in old Chicago and mutants, after the movie, they didn't play that up at all.
No, they went away from that.
Yeah, so you don't see that mutant wasteland anymore after the film.
Right.
The first made-for-TV movie was released theatrically in March of 1979, and Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. The film made $21 million at the North American box office, prompting Universal to move ahead with a weekly series later that year. The film, which was also released internationally, featured all of the main protagonist characters who would appear in the weekly series, and also included Princess Ardala of the planet Draconia and her henchman Kane. The theatrical film series served as a pilot in the first two-part episode entitled Awakening. Several scenes were edited, some to remove the more adult dialogue in the film, including when Buck refers to Wilma as ballsy. And later on, he says shit in a scene which Buck kills Ardala's henchman, Tiger Man. They edited that out because they wanted to keep Tiger Man, because he was kind of a popular character. Some new and extended scenes were added for the TV version, including several scenes with Buck's new apartment, which was a setting for the new final scene in which Dr. Hewitt and Wilma try to persuade Buck to join the Defense Directorate. This scene ends with Buck actually declining the offer, though he opts to join them in an unofficial capacity. And that was the other thing. Buck never was officially a member of the...
I think by the time Searcher came around, he did become an official member.
Yeah.
I think that's what they kind of alluded to in season 2.
Yeah. In the second episode, Planet of the Slave Girls, in this unofficial role, Buck does everything from acting as a covert agent on that undercover mission, and various other assignments in other episodes. Wilma, he aids Wilma as a flight or combat instructor. Buck is most often partnered with William, with whom he often shares a flirtatious relationship. Now, including the two-part pilot episode, the first season comprises 24 episodes. So 22 episodes of the television series plus the pilot theatrical release.
The two-part pilot, right?
Yeah. 4 of the stories in the other 22 episodes were also two-parters. And the tone of the series was lighter than the movie. It showed a more positive picture of future Earth. The inner city was known as New Chicago, and human civilization had established as having spread once again across the planet.
Which I'm wondering if that was, I know part of the reason that the show didn't continue past season 2 is Gil Gerard was becoming increasingly difficult to work with.
Yes.
But I'm wondering if it's also that the tone turned a lot darker in season 2. The Searcher episodes had some very dark themes.
Yes. They were more akin to the pilot. In the series, no reference was made to the barren radioactive wastelands. And in several episodes, Buck went to the world outside and it was lush and green. You never saw the mutants again. Buck sometimes ventured outside of New Chicago with no hazards encountered. Now, Earth no longer has an invisible defense shield surrounding it. It's showed to be the center of an interstellar human-dominated government, sometimes called the Federation or the Alliance, with its capital of New Chicago. During the first season, references were also made to other New Earth cities such as New Detroit, New Manhattan, New Phoenix, New Tulsa, Boston Complex, and New London. City on the Sea was also mentioned as being the former New Orleans. Wilma Deering and Dr. Hewer were the only Defense Directorate. Man, I'm sorry. That is so hard for me to say. were the only defense-directed personnel seen in every episode, though several others were seen in individual episodes. Most defense-directed personnel regarded Buck as being at least an honorary captain, because he was a captain when he left, Earth in the Ranger 3. And also his Air Force background was used to assist in their training. Like, he kind of helped them learn dogfighting techniques. Like, there were several episodes where he was training with Wilma. I could think of one where this other captain comes along and they actually have a fist fight while they're training.
Mm-hmm.
And then they end up being really good friends.
Well, the thing about it was what they used a flight computer and combat computer to help determine when and where to make their shots and everything like that. And Buck taught them to come off of those and rely on themselves, and taught them how to truly dogfight, because they were getting beaten by other ships that the combat computer couldn't outthink.
That's right. The combat computer couldn't anticipate the draconian pilots, so they Buck taught them how to fly fire. Is that right? Is that the right term? Fly fire?
Sure.
Okay.
We'll go with that.
All right. Cool. Nice. Well, we're not grammatists. Now, travel between the stars was accomplished with the use of stargates, artificially created portals in space similar to wormholes. But I also referred to warp travel at least on one occasion by Wilma Deering. Stargates appear as diamond-shaped quartet of brilliant lights in space that shimmer when a vessel is making transit. Some people find the transit through a stargate to be physically unpleasant. Transit resembles spinning of the spacecraft. Buck has a dislike of them, is shown in part of the episode Planet of the Slave Girls, and again in part 2 of the episode The Plot to Kill a City. Now, to portray the futuristic looking buildings of Earth, they use stock shots of the remaining National Pavilion of Expo 67, particularly the French and British pavilions, as well as shots of the Bonaventure Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. Wani and Clay, who played Major Marla Landers in the first season episode Vegas in Space, was originally cast as Wilma for the TV series.
Talk about another episode with scantily clad women.
Oh my God, Vegas in Space? Yes.
I mean, the what was her name? Tawny?
Yes.
I mean, she was practically naked.
Yes. And it was the late 70s. There was a lot of that going on. Which is why the dads like to watch it with their kids. That may be one of the reasons why this series was so important to young boys.
Maybe.
Erin Gray initially opted not to return after the pilot film, but she later changed her mind. Wilma's personality was softened considerably in the series, especially in the second season. She was always a confident and consummate professional in her work, but she was way more relaxed as the series went on. And that could have been due to, being around Buck and his 20th century ideas.
That's what I always figured it was.
Yeah.
Because all of them, Tweaky, Dr. Huer, and Wilma all evolved per se during the series as they spent more and more time with Buck.
Yeah. Now, Buck was involved to some degree with a different woman almost every week. Producers determined that Wilma would have blonde hair, so dye jobs were needed to lighten Erin Gray's brunette locks. During the final episode of the first season, Gray was allowed to return to her natural hair color, and Wilma was dark-haired throughout season 2. Buck's best-known enemy during the first season again was Princess Ardala. She appeared in 4 separate stories.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot, including the pilot film, Escape from Wedded Bliss, and Ardala Returns, and the 2-part first season finale, Flight of the War Witch, in which they went to an alternate universe to help these people in this alternate universe. Which, if you watch the last 2-parter of the first season, it makes no sense.
Right.
Honestly, that is really the only what I would say is bad episode of the series. I did not like that. There were some cool effects, but the story didn't make any sense. It's almost like they had this great idea, but they only had so much money to do part of it. If that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the opening title sequence for the series included stock footage of the Apollo 4 and Apollo 6 launches. The series had an overall budget of $800,000 per episode.
Wow.
Or per hour of air time. According to Starlog, issue number 32, March of 1980, former actor Jock Gaynor served as producer for 20 episodes. Although reasonably popular with viewers, the first season failed to receive much critical acclaim. One very vocal critic of the series was Gerard himself, who pushed for more serious storytelling and often clashed with the producers and the network over the show's tone and handling. He often arbitrarily refused to perform some of the more comical lines in the script and was complaining that Buck was just a wise ass who was making one joke after another, and often rewrote scripts himself to place more emphasis on his own character at the expense of others. For example, the episode Escape from Wedded Bliss, the script originally called for Buck to be rescued from the Draconians in the end by Wilma, but Gerard vetoed the idea. Unhappy with the show's direction, Gerard became increasingly difficult to work with, which led to tensions on set. A meeting between writers, script editors, Ann Collins, and Alan Brennett and Gil Gerard went badly, and they quit the show midway through the first season. Gerard himself was threatened with legal action by the network if he continued to cause problems and hinder the production.
Oh.
In November 1980 issue of Starlog, Gerard even said he had hoped for the series would not be picked up for a second season because he had no wish to go through another season like that.
Wow.
Yeah, there are documentation of his being difficult to work with. And okay, I can understand wanting to put the best product out there, but rewriting the script so your character gets more airtime,
right,
is the weaseliest thing you can do as an actor.
Well, that's
I mean?
And that's an egotist too. That's one that can't put his ego out of the way for the betterment of a show.
Yeah, and again, if you're working on it to make the show better, you know what? I got no argument with that. I might not necessarily agree with all of your choices, but if your intent is to make the series better, hey, I'd say fight for what you believe in. You know what I mean?
Well, and let's go ahead and put a fine point on how good of an actor he may have been, as cheesy as it may look.
Yeah.
With all of that ego and everything behind the scenes, if you watch Buck Rogers, I mean, the way I saw it before I knew any of this, I thought that Gil Gerard was just a nice guy.
Yeah.
Because of the way he portrays Buck Rogers. He portrays Buck Rogers, this guy that everybody just loves, but behind the scenes, not in the least little bit.
Yeah. And from what I understand, nobody. Now, Aaron Gray will not speak ill of him. At least anything that I could find. And I think that is because Aaron Gray is Aaron Gray.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I can say that she, even though she really enjoyed the production of Buck Rogers, she preferred the work atmosphere of Silver Spoons way more. Like, she loved working with Joel Silver. Joel Silver and her were friends for years, from what I understand. I don't think she spoke to Gil Gerard after this series ended.
Wow.
But again, she doesn't say anything about him. I think she'll talk about difficulties in filming and things like that, difficulties of costume, but she's a consummate professional. And I do appreciate her for that.
Sure.
Now, production on the second season was delayed by several months due to an actor strike. I do not remember this.
Oh, yeah.
I do not remember I remember the writer strike in the mid to late 80s, but I do not remember an actor strike.
Yep.
Now, production resumed in the fall of 1980, and the series had a new set of producers headed by John Mantley, who primarily worked on television westerns. And you can see it. You know what I mean? If you go back and watch that second season, there's definitely a Western feel.
Oh, sure.
And several episodes were filmed at the ranch.
Oh, it's Skywalker Ranch?
No, not Skywalker Ranch. The old studio ranch where they filmed Star Trek and Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah.
MASH.
Well, and this is where, in the second season, where we also get a new crew. There's new crew members that we meet because of being on Searcher, but then you get the race of Hawk.
Yeah. The bird people.
Yes.
Which Glenn A. Larson was fascinated by ancient civilizations and things of that nature. And he was fascinated by the Birdman culture of Easter Island, which is where this idea comes from. Because basically the Birdman would take over running the culture for a year. And then they would have the Birdman quest where they would have to race down this cliff, swim across to this small island, pick up these eggs from, I want to say frigate birds, put them on their heads, climb back up the mountain, and be the first to cross the finish line with an intact egg. That is how they determined who the leading group was. There's a great film about this called Rapa Nui, where they talk about the last days of the Easter Island culture, because their name for it is Rapa Nui. But yeah, I'm sorry. That's just a little background information on the idea of the bird people.
Sure.
So,
and the whole idea, if I recall correct, 'cause it's been a long time since I've watched the Searcher series, is they're out searching for lost civilizations.
Yes, it was lost human civilizations after the fall of, after the nuclear war. They stumble upon Hawk and his people as being an Earth civilization who were different from human beings. They were bird-like. They had feathers instead of hair. They don't really describe where they came from. I think they theorize that they're an offshoot of humanity. And yeah, they're searching for these things instead of defending Earth from external threats. Buck, Wilma, and Tweaky were part of the crew of the Searcher, searching out the lost tribes of humanity who had scattered in the 5 centuries since Earth's 20th century nuclear war. That's it.
Good. I did remember that correctly.
You were correct, sir.
Dennis Haysbert's in this too.
Yes. Dennis is in this.
One of my favorite actors.
Yes. And as we can attest, a hell of a nice guy.
Oh, yes. Met him in person.
Dennis, if you're out there listening, Fort Worth misses you. If you ever get a chance to stop by, we'd love to see you.
God, I hope he's a listener.
Yeah. Dennis was the best, with the best voice.
Yes.
Another notable change in the second season was the disappearance of many of the regular characters, as we've discussed before. But with the addition of Admiral Ephraim Asimov, and they named him after Isaac Asimov. Again, Hawk, as we've discussed, is an alien character. Well, they call him an alien character, but he's not. They're from Earth.
They're some sort of offshoot of Earth.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're nearly extinct bird people, is what they refer to them in, as my notes. Dr. Goodfellow, played by Wilfred Hyde White, is an elderly scientist with an insatiable curiosity. And his creation, Crichton, voiced by Jeff David, who's a snobbish robot built by Dr. Goodfellow, but finds believing that lowly humans could have built him to be difficult.
Hey, go back to Hawk real quick. I'm going to change my mind. The starfighter I'd rather have,
Hawk ship.
Yes.
Yeah, that has actual talons that come down and grab things.
Yes, that is the coolest.
That is a really cool ship. The character of Wilma Deering was softened for the second season because they wanted to tone down the militaristic Colonel Deering image. who often gave Buck orders, and to make her more feminine. Another change to the second season was the sound of Tweaky's voice. Because of an illness, Mel Blanc was briefly replaced by Bob Alea for the voice of Tweaky for the first 7 episodes of the second season. Now, he did a pretty good job of making it sound like Mel Blanc. I thought he did a really great job. And then when Mel Blanc came back, you don't really notice much of a difference, except in the second season, they got rid of the beady, 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 which is the best part of Tweaky.
Right. Right.
I thought that was terrible because they still had another robot to interpret for him. I wish they'd have kept that because that was just a recording.
Well, and the way I always saw it, I saw it as Tweaky himself evolving. And,
that's true.
And so that didn't bother me near as much.
Now, the substance of the storylines also changed in the second season. Less emphasis was placed on militaristic ideas, with a couple of few exceptions. And Gerard scaled back the humor in the second season in favor of more serious episodes, as we spoken to earlier. That the tone was darker. Buck and Wilma's relationship became slightly more romantic during the second year, though most romantic activity was implied and took place off screen. Moreover, the second season deals with more serious concepts such as evolution, ecology, racism, pollution, war, nuclear power, identity, the self, and religion. It also draws on mythology as exemplified by Hawks people, who are a variant of the bird people found in ancient tales around the world, particularly on Rapa Nui or Easter Island. An episode also included a story about a satyr creature, which I kind of liked. That was another frightening. The satyr was very, very scary.
Yeah,
and it turned out it was a disease.
Yeah, because Buck caught it.
Yeah, Buck starts to become a satyr, and the satyr he had been fighting to save his family from, turns out he was actually the father who had been turned into the satyr himself. But you don't find that out until about halfway through the episode. In addition to the parallels to Larson's previous television series, Battlestar Galactica, the second season is similar in theme to Star Trek, with the searcher roaming through space, much like the USS Enterprise had. Buck being the maverick explorer, true to the style of Captain James T. Kirk, and the serious, rather stoic Hawk being a revamp of Mr. Spock. Even Wilma, to some extent, has been remodeled after Lieutenant Uhura from Star Trek, often dressed in a miniskirt uniform and regularly sitting at a communications console on the bridge of the searcher. Although initially pleased with the change in personnel, Gerard again became unhappy with the show at the time of production. Gerard spoke highly of a new showrunner, Joe Mantley, but in a retrospective article in the mid-1990s, he was more critical of him and the Star Trek-esque style of the second season. Ratings dropped significantly after the season premiere, and coupled with an increasingly problematic star, NBC canceled the series at the end of an 11-episode strike, abbreviating season. No final storyline was produced, with the final episode broadcast being a normal standalone episode. Now, I have some other things in my notes that basically just are prompts. One of them is Space Vampire, so we can talk as you like.
Yeah, again, one of the scariest episode, or actually to me, the scariest episode, because just the makeup and the voice.
Yeah. Do you know that
Space
Vampire I always thought was in the second season? It's in the first season.
Yep, it's in the first season. Because and then when Wilma gets bitten by the space vampire, or I think it uses its long fingernails and not a bite.
Yeah.
But that voice that comes out of her is just terrifying.
Yeah.
Space Vampire is a great episode.
Best episode out there. I want to say that all of the Buck Rogers stuff is on Tubi.
Yes.
It's either Tubi or IMDb TV. So it's free. You guys can go out there and catch it.
I know Tubi for sure because that's where I started watching it.
Okay, so it is Tubi. I couldn't remember which one it was.
I'm assuming eventually it'll probably be on Peacock.
Yeah, because it was an NBC. It's Universal Studios produced and showed on NBC. So yeah, it should be on Peacock eventually.
Yeah.
They have talked rumblings about basically doing a reboot of this series as well.
Yep, that's been on the docket for quite a while.
Oh my God, 20 years at least.
Yeah. I'd love to see a modern treatment of it.
Yes, I would like them to use some of the designs, because I think a lot of the designs they used in this series were beautiful.
Well, and let me throw it out there. This is another Glenn Larson project.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have Ronald Moore do it.
Oh my God, Ronald D. Moore. Yes.
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay, so I'm going to squirrel for a second.
Sure.
There is a Deep Space Nine documentary called Things We Left Behind, where Ronald Moore, Hans Baimler, Michael Echeverria, Robert Hewitt Wolf, and a couple of other writers I can't think of off the top of my head, but they were all Deep Space Nine writers, sit around and propose an 8th season for Deep Space Nine. It keeps cutting back to them in this writer's room, and they're basically writing out episode 1 on a big whiteboard. And watching the interplay between them, where they'll be like, oh, wait, that's right, she was like this. Oh, I thought she died this way. No. I wrote that episode. This is what happened. You watch them basically put together a story on how it would play out in the writer's room with these guys. If for nothing else, if all you watch is the bit of them basically putting a storyline together, it's worth the price of admission. And Ronald D. Moore is basically leading the charge.
That's cool.
Yeah. And yes, I would love to see him do Buck Rogers, assuming he's not doing something else.
Right. I'd love to see a reboot of it, because it was that was can't miss TV for me. It was my favorite TV show. Mm-hmm. I watched it every single week without failure, and I have watched it many, many times since. Every time I was able to go out and find it, I've gone through it. Like I said, it's only been a couple of months that I started up again, and I'm through at least the first 5 or 6 episodes.
Yeah, and they're not bad. I mean, I would say, other than the last 2-part episode of season 1, everything is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really well done. I kind of wish it would have been a little bit easier, because it had good ratings. People loved this show.
Mm-hmm.
They got some drops in the 2nd season,
right? And I think it's because it turned darker.
Yeah, it got a little darker, but the drop in the ratings weren't that bad. Plus, they had reduced the cost per episode with the Searcher, because they didn't have to use as many sets. And if they'd film on the back lot in the ranch, which didn't cost, Universal's back lot and Universal's ranch, that didn't cost them a dime. They owned it.
Right.
Other than paying people to be there, but they didn't have to pay for spaces. They already had the set built. It was a cheaper show to produce in the 2nd season. Plus the writing I would say the writing in the 2nd season is better.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
But it was, Gil Gerard just became so difficult. Like they changed the show to make him happy. And they changed it in exactly the way that he wanted it changed. And then he started bitching about all the changes that were made.
Yeah, I just think he was just a very difficult person to please.
Yes.
I don't know that he was a very happy person as it was. And
yeah.
So, it's...
I don't like to speak ill of the dead. Yeah, right. I don't like to speak ill of the dead. He did pass away, right?
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
No, he's still alive.
Okay. Well, in that case, I don't like speaking ill of the elderly. So, but his difficulty in the series became famous industry-wide. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason why he didn't work a lot after that.
Right. And I looked up his filmography too. He actually has done stuff all the way up to 2019, but it looks like it was all bit parts, except for looks like he was, I think, in like 6 episodes of Days of Our Lives.
Okay.
So it doesn't look like he was in much where he was a star, although I know there was some because I saw some stuff where he was the star. But yeah, it's just, it sucks that he was so difficult to deal with, because I loved the character of Buck Rogers as he portrayed it. I
Yes.
loved the series. It was a huge favorite for me. And I hate that his behavior ended, which for something that was so near and dear to me.
Yeah, because it didn't, the ratings wouldn't have killed it by themselves. And again, in today's numbers, it would have got 10 seasons.
Sure.
Yeah, because the ratings now are spread out so much more.
Well, like
a lot of series would be like number one with the ratings that they had.
Right.
Right now.
Well, all we can hope for is, like so many other series that really didn't get its due because of one reason or another. Let's hope they do a reboot of this, and let's hope the right person does a reboot of this, and we get some of our favorite shows back.
Yes. Like Battlestar Galactica.
Exactly.
Like, I'd like to see a Blink 7 too. Survivors. They actually brought Survivors back too for, I think it was like a 2-season little series. It was really good. But yeah, I would like to see a recreation. But that is basically it for the television series Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. All I can say is, kids, get out there and watch it. If nothing else, watch the opening film. It's worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
The special effects are good
for the time.
For television in 1979, they're exceptional.
Yeah.
For now, they're not bad.
No, and just understand there is going to be some cheesy factors you watch through this,
Yes.
but just realize this was this was some of our favorite stuff as we were growing up. Yes. So definitely go give it a shot.
Yes.
I think you'll at least appreciate some of the science fiction from the 70s.
If for nothing else, it was beautifully shot.
Yeah.
The color saturation is wonderful.
Yep. Cool deal. All right, then with that, then I think we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For my story today, I got my information off Biography, a Netflix documentary, American Murder, The Family Next Door, Familicide, a systematic literature review, Good Housekeeping, the New York Times, Wikipedia, the Netline, and again, this episode was requested by multiple listeners. I was actually surprised how many people had said, hey, please cover this story. And so for today, my story is about the Watts family murders.
The Watts family murders?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So it was the summer of 2018, and this should have been a joyous one for the Watts family. Husband Chris Watts, who was then 33, and his wife Shanann, 34, just found out they were expecting a son to join 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste in their 5-bedroom suburban home in Frederick, Colorado, which was about 27 miles north of Denver. The family balanced their lives between Chris's job as an operator at Andarko Petroleum and Shanann's frequent business travels for the nutrition supplement company Lavelle. But their lives did center around their daughters, as shown in Shanann's frequent Facebook posts. What I was so fascinated with the documentary on Netflix is it's an hour and a half that comes entirely from police body cam photo, Facebook posts, I might have even been Instagram posts, text messages, and police video from station houses.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's really, really cool the way they do it. And you really get to see that in how Shanann is frequently on Facebook posting about their lives. You know, because from the outside, they appeared to be a very happy suburban family. But Shanann's friends really kind of started hearing about trouble in paradise. Still, though, no one could have guessed the chillingly brutal murders that were about to put an end to their happily ever after lives. So Chris and Shanann met in 2010 when Chris sent Shanann a Facebook request. And Shanann was in New Jersey at the time, but later moved to North Carolina, where she and Chris met through social media. She said in a Facebook video, I got a friend from Chris on Facebook. And she said she wasn't even looking for the boyfriend at the time. She said, quote, I was like, what the heck? I'm never going to meet him, except. But he kind of kept after her, and she said she kept pushing him away, and she gave him an out every single day. She said, quote, I tortured him, I rejected him, but he stuck around, and he stuck around because he was the one for me. And on November 3rd, 2012, Shanann and Chris married in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they moved to Colorado in 2013. So they seem like the perfect couple if you were to just watch the social media posts that Shanann was doing. Everything looked great for them.
It sounds a little stalkery, though.
That wasn't how she portrayed it. She portrayed it as he really wanted to meet her and was interested in her, and he just didn't give up. So I can see where your point is on that, but the way that she portrayed it, it didn't really seem that way. So again, they moved to Colorado in 2013, and on December 17th, 2013, their first child, Bella, is born. This is Bella Marie Watts. She's born in Colorado. And an article later read, quote, Shanann was so excited to have her first baby girl. She spent every minute thanking God and taking care of her precious gift that the Lord had blessed her with, how she loved and cherished her. Then things kind of went on their way for a while. And in June of 2015, the Watts family filed for bankruptcy. They had a combined income of $90,000 in 2014. And in addition to credit card debt, student loans, and medical bills, they filed for bankruptcy, stating that their $3,000 mortgage, $600 car payments, all took up most of their $4,900 in income and monthly expenses. And additionally, their homeowners association sued them for unpaid HOA fees. In July 17, 2015, their second daughter, Celeste, was born. She was nicknamed Cece. And the younger daughter, Celeste Catherine Watts, she's a summer baby, also born in Colorado. And the family said, quote, oh, how Shanann was so excited to be able to have another child because of her battle with lupus. She was determined to stay healthy, and with her love for her Celeste, every moment with her was a blessing. Shanann talked about her battle with lupus. She realized something was wrong. She started losing hair. She started losing weight. And with the lupus, she discovered that she never should have had children in the first place. She wasn't supposed to be able to have children, and now she's had two girls. And so, she felt blessed about everything in her life. She had a husband who loved her, doted on the children, and two beautiful girls.
I have heard that lupus can be, I don't know if this is the right word, but activated by childbirth in women.
I don't know. I didn't look that up. You could be right. On May 5th, 2018, Shanann posted a sweet Facebook Live video. And in a 31-minute, 13-second long Facebook video, Shanann mused about family life, saying, I love waking up now on Saturdays and being able to enjoy my family. I believe that everything in life happens for a reason. And I also believe people are placed in our lives for a reason. And in the video, Chris can be seen playing with the girls in the video, in the background. So again, everything from social media looks like this family has a perfect life. And then in June of 2018, Shanann surprised Chris with the news they were expecting. In a video that was released later, Shanann wears a t-shirt that says, oops, we did it again, and surprised Chris with the news of their pregnancy. And they showed him on video. He laughed about it and kept saying, that's awesome. That's awesome. And again, Shanann was super excited because she wasn't ever supposed to have two children, much less now three. So she was just all over this. And on June 17th.
3 kids is a lot.
Kids, yeah.
3 kids is a lot.
I only have one, so I don't know that.
Yes, 3 kids is a lot.
On June 17th, 2018, Shanann posted a Father's Day message to Chris on Facebook. And it said, quote, Chris, we are so incredibly blessed to have you. You do so much every day for us and take such great care of us. You are the reason I was brave enough to agree to number 3. From laundry to kids' showers, you are incredible, and we are so lucky to have you in our life. Happy Father's Day.
That would have made me cry.
Sure. And that was June 17th, 2018.
Okay.
In June 2018, Chris started talking to a woman named Nicole Kessinger. Nicole worked at Anadarko Petroleum's environmental department, and she would see the operators, including Chris, on the way to the fridge. Chris came by our office and struck up a conversation one day. They have their first meeting outside the office later in a month. And in July of 2018, Chris started a physical relationship with Kessinger.
Dude.
Yep. According to the Denver Post, Chris saw Nicole about 4 or 5 times a week. And then they started having their physical relationship in early July. And Chris tells her that he's almost divorced. And later that month, when Shanann and the girls are out of town in North Carolina, he tells Nicole that their divorce is final. So we've gone from him being this awesome, great dad and that great Father's Day message to Chris to now he's told another woman that he's divorced, that he's divorcing and his divorce is final. Insider
I wonder
report.
how often that had happened.
You mean with other women?
Yeah.
You know what? That's a great point that's never brought up. Nicole is the only one that's ever brought up that he had an affair with. So who knows? Who knows? According to according to insider reports, Nicole goes to Chris's home for the first time on July 4th, and they have their first phone call on record on July 7th. They also go on a date to Shelby American Collection Car Museum on July 14th and spend the night at the Great Sand Dunes National Park on July 28th, all while his family is away. So
the wife and the kids went off, and he went and had a tryst with her.
Yes, and they recorded stuff on video too. Nicole even said on video how much she was just falling for him and she was in love with him. And on July 30th, Chris even gave her a love note before going out to join his family on vacation. This guy is a piece of crap. On July 31st, Chris flew to North Carolina to join his family. And despite it being a family vacation, texts that Shanann forwards to a friend show signs of trouble between the couple. She complains to the friend that despite her and Chris being together, that Chris has barely touched her or paid her any attention. Further messages also show there was tension between her and Chris's parents. Chris's parents apparently never approved of Shanann and didn't even show to their wedding. So they just didn't really like her.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, my mama was not crazy about my wife until she gave her grandchildren. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but she went to your wedding.
It was at her house.
Right.
Yes, that's true.
So, on this, if Miranda were married to marry a guy I didn't approve of, I would still go to the wedding if there was a wedding.
Absolutely.
But Chris's parents did not go to the wedding. They disapproved of Shanann that much. So
did they ever say why?
No, in the documentary they did not. No, they just didn't like her. I know that some of her friends said, and maybe this is part of it. Some of her friends said that some people thought Shanann was a little bossy. Her friend later said it, as in a joking manner. She was bossy, but not in a bad way. She was just she was a take control kind of person. And so maybe Chris's parents thought she was too bossy and controlling. I don't know. Can't answer that. On August 4th, 2018, Nicole is shopping for wedding dresses online, and it's just weeks after they started talking. Nicole's cell phone data showed she looked at wedding dresses online for 2 hours. Again, she thought Chris is divorced.
Well, yeah, but I've heard that, some people look at wedding dresses a lot. Like it.
Some do, but this is just another point that she may be believing that her and Chris's relationship is going somewhere where it's not going to go. On August 9th, 2018, Shanann left on a business trip to Arizona. And after confiding to her friends about her troubles with Chris, she texts her friends that she and Chris had their best talk yet before she leaves on the trip. And she even drafted a handwritten letter to him just to tell him how much she loved him. August 11th, 2018, Chris hired a babysitter and goes out with Nicole while Shanann is away. He says he's going to a baseball game with coworkers, but instead he goes to a bar with Nicole. August 13th, 2018, at 1:48 a.m., Shanann returns from her business trip. About 2 o'clock in the morning, her friend Nicole Atkinson, not the same Nicole, just making sure we're aware of two different people here.
Yes.
Her friend Nicole Atkinson gave Shanann a ride to her home on the 2800 block of Saratoga Trail after she returned from the trip. At 5:15 a.m., Chris claims that he left for work. Chris later told the Denver ABC affiliate, quote, "I left for work early that morning, like 5:15 to 5:30, but admitted to them that he and Shanann had a, quote, emotional conversation." Later that day, about 1:40 p.m., Shanann's friend Nicole grew concerned and contacts police. She was worried when she didn't hear from Shanann. He called her and texted her several times, and she said, quote, "I knew she had a doctor's appointment that morning because she's pregnant. She didn't show up for it, and I was even more concerned." Shanann is then reported missing around 1:40 p.m. Nicole called the police to do a welfare check. When after Chris comes home, they're allowed to go inside. Chris allows them inside the house, and they find Shanann's phone, keys, and her purse are still at the house. But there's no sign of Shanann. Chris said that even the girls' blankies are missing, which they went everywhere with those, so those were missing too. Police did discover that the next door neighbor had a security camera that recorded 24/7. So they watched the video from that night and early in that morning. And they did see the video of Chris backing his truck up to the house, which Chris says is to deter robberies, as some people had been messing with their truck. Chris then left the neighbors to go back to his house. And that neighbor said that Chris was not acting right. He said that he's never fidgety like he was when they were watching the video. According to the news station, Chris says, quote, "She was going to go to a friend's house with the kids, and that's the last thing I heard. That was it. It was very vague." Then he told police, "This isn't right. I don't know what to do. If they're not safe, that's what's tearing me apart." Excuse me. And this is not a big town, by the way. If I recall right, they had about 20 police officers. The police start putting up missing flyers for Shanann and going door to door asking if anyone has any information on Shanann and the girls. Search crews do bring in scent dogs, and they get scents around the house. And then the news, all the local news has then arrived on this, because this is a big thing. It's a small community. Things like this don't happen here, and the community at large is very concerned. On the news, Chris pled for his family's return. Excuse me. He's talking to the Denver ABC affiliate, and he says, quote, "Shanann Bella Celeste, if you're out there, just come back. Like, if anybody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without anybody here. Please bring them back. Last night, I had every light on in the house. I was hoping that I would get just ran over by the kids running to the door, just like barrel rushing me, but it didn't happen. And it was just a traumatic night trying to be here. I mean, my kids are my life. Those smiles light up my life. It was tearing me apart last night to go into their rooms and know I wasn't going to turn their rain machines on, and know I wasn't going to turn their monitor on, and know I wasn't going to kiss them. That's why last night was just horrible." When asked by reporters if he thought that Shanann had just took off, he also said, quote, "I hope that she's somewhere safe right now and with the kids. But I mean, could she have just taken off? I don't know. But if somebody has her and they're not safe, like, I want them back now." On August 15th, 2018, the FBI joined the search for both the missing Shanann and the daughters. Police did bring Chris in for questioning, and he said he was beginning to believe that someone took his wife and kids. He says it must have been someone that Shanann knew because nothing in the house was broken and it was freaking him out. Police then tell Chris that they noticed he's gotten pretty fit as compared to pictures from a few years ago. And they ask him if he's been cheating on Shanann, as guys, when they start cheating or want to cheat, that getting fit happens. And Chris says, no, I have not been cheating on Shanann, which we know is a lie.
It's a lie.
Police then ask Chris if he would take a polygraph test, which he agrees. And this is all on video as well. And it's very interesting. The female polygrapher who gives him the test kind of opens it up and talks about what to expect with the test, so on and so on. And she tells him that he understands that this test is to determine whether he's lying or not. And she said, and it would be pretty silly for somebody to sit here and take this polygraph test if they were lying. You agree with that, right? And he's like, oh, yeah, of course I agree. Well, Chris failed the polygraph test. He initially tried saying he didn't lie on the test, and police tell him that they know he's lying. It's time to come clean. And Chris then admitted to having the affair with Nicole and denying it to Shanann. Police continue to grill Chris for hours about what happened. And, they go through a lot of this as well. And I mean, they basically tell him, they're like, Chris, did you kill Shanann? Chris, are you responsible for this? All we want to do is find her. We want to find her. We find the girls. Did you hurt Shanann because she did something to the girls? What's going on? Well, Chris then says,
so they were trying to give him an out.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like they were trying to do. Well, Chris says that he will agree to tell the truth, but only if he could talk to his father first. And Chris confesses to his father, Ronnie, and then to police that he did kill Shanann, but claims that the reason for his for this murder was because she had smothered their daughters first. He originally says that he had seen Shanann strangling Cece through the family's baby monitor, and he said that Bella was lying on her bed and she looked blue, and that enraged him, and so he then strangled Shanann, and then he told police exactly where to find Shanann and the children. On August 16th, 2018, Shanann, Bella, and Celeste's bodies were found exactly where Chris said they were. The 3 murdered bodies were recovered at Chris's work site. The same day, Chris appears in the Weld County Court for a bond hearing where he is denied bond. Also on this day, Nicole Kessinger speaks to police saying, I legitimately think his cheese was sliding off his cracker long before he met me.
Wow.
On August 21st, 2018, Chris is charged with first-degree murder. This is a week after he pleaded for their safe return. He's charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder plus 2 additional first-degree charges for victims being 12 or younger. Additionally, he faces another count for the unlawful termination of a pregnancy, plus 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body for a total of 9 charges. On November 6, 2018, Chris pled guilty to all 9 counts. Chris appeared in court, pleading to all 9 counts against him. Shanann's family requests that the death penalty not be sought. So let's go back to August 13th, 2018, because now Chris has given a full confession. What he did is he woke Shanann as he's ready to go to work and wants to talk to her about their marriage and their future. And he wants to talk about their marriage and their future. And despite Shanann carrying their unborn son, he tells her about his affair and that their marriage won't last. Shanann then told Chris that she wouldn't see the kids again, which enraged Chris, and he strangled her to death. This next part is going to be a little hard for some people, so bear with me. Bella, who was 4, comes in and asks what's wrong with mom, and Chris wraps Shanann in the blanket and carries her to a truck. He told Bella that Shanann was sick. He then put both kids in the back seat and drove to his work site. He then smothered Celeste in the back seat and put her body in an oil tank, and does the same thing with Bella in another tank. He put Celeste in the oil tank first and then came back for Bella. And in a confession later from Chris, Bella asked, is the same thing going to happen to me as Cece? So she watched him murder she watched him murder her own sister. And then Bella's last words were "Daddy, no," as she fought back as best she could. But she's also eventually strangled to death before being dumped in a separate oil tank. Yeah.
She's 4 years old.
Yeah.
And it's her own father doing it.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Chris then buried his wife's body in the ground nearby. On November 19th, 2018, Chris is sentenced to life in prison. Judge Marcelo Kopkow calls the murder spree perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime I've ever handled out of the thousands of cases I have seen, issuing 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, including 48 years for unlawful termination of Shanann's pregnancy and 36 for disposing of the bodies of his family. On this same day, Shanann's parents filed for wrongful death suit against Chris. On February 3rd, go ahead.
Okay. Something about this story doesn't track.
Okay.
So he tells Shanann, our marriage ain't gonna last. Well, you'll never see your kids again. Mm-hmm. So he kills Shanann. Okay. Crime of passion. I understand that. Then he takes his kids in the car to dump the body, right? Because you can't leave a 4 and a 3-year-old alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why does he then kill his kids? Because if that story is true, he's still never going to see them again.
I agree. And we're actually going to talk in a minute exactly about that.
Okay.
Exactly about that. Because what you're referring to is something that has not been studied very well to this date. And there's not a whole lot of information on it. So I added some stuff here at the end. I'm going to talk about exactly that mentality and that behavior. On December 3rd, 2018, Chris is transferred to a Wisconsin correctional facility. And due to safety concerns, he's moved from Colorado to Dodge Correctional Facility in Waupun, Wisconsin. On February 18th, 2019, Chris confesses to killing his daughters in a detailed explanation. In a 5-hour interview from prison, Chris recounts the harrowing details of his young daughter's final moments and confesses to killing them and disposing of the bodies. He said, quote, "This was like the epitome of being angry, the epitome of showing a rage, the epitome of losing your mind." He even admitted that older daughter Bella asked if he was going to do the same thing to his sister, as we talked about earlier, and that the 4-year-old tried to fight back. On November 18th, 2019, Chris is ordered to pay Shanann's parents $6 million after almost a year after the lawsuit was filed. The Weld County judge ruled that Chris owes Shanann's parents the $6 million, and that's $3 million for each death and $3 million for emotional pain. And the amount will grow with 8% interest every year that it's not paid. While they're unlikely to get any of the money, it does prevent Chris from profiting from the murders in any way. And today, Chris is continuing to serve his life sentence at the maximum security prison in Wisconsin. According to People magazine, nobody wants anything to do with him. He's on the lowest social tier of the entire prison. He's in protective custody because if he's around other inmates, he'd be in real danger. The sick thing is if there wasn't enough sick things here, he used to receive or still receives a lot of fan mail in prison. Many of them are from women who thought he was handsome and felt compassion for him. So I thought that was really kind of sick.
From what I understand, that happens a lot. There are women who who are attracted to people in prison for some reason, and men for women in women's prisons as well.
And this one is just sick. So, as promised, I wanted to talk about kind of the behind this case, because this case has been connected in the media to the crime of family annihilation, is what it's called familicide. And this is a different type of murder than the ones we usually cover, such as serial killers who generally fall into one or more sections of the McDonald triad that I've talked about before.
The McDonald triad.
Familicide differs from other forms of mass murder in that the murderer kills family members or loved ones rather than anonymous people. This has a very different psychodynamic and psychiatric significance, but the distinction is not always made. A familicide is a type of murder or murder-suicide in which a perpetrator kills multiple close family members in quick succession, most often children, relatives, spouse, siblings, or parents, just like Josh Powell and the Robert Fisher cases that we've covered. There was a literature review done in 2018 that noted contextual and offense characteristics of familicide. Among the 63 articles reviewed, 74 to 85% noted relationship problems or separation. The article also found evidence of financial problems, intoxication, and use of firearms. This literature review unveiled that 71% of these offenses were motivated in regard to conflict between parents and 29% associated to the perpetrator's situation in life. And lastly, this article reported 2 studies, one of which found that many of the motives involved feelings of abandonment, psychosis, and narcissistic rage. The other study found that 60% of these perpetrators were suicidal and 40% homicidal. A study of 30 cases in Ohio found that most of the killings were motivated by a parent's desire to stop their children's suffering. According to ABC News contributor and former FBI agent Brad Garrett, people responsible for killing their families tend to be white males in their 30s. Family annihilators can also be divided into 4 groups: anomic, disappointed, self-righteous, and paranoid. In this typology, the anomic killer sees his family purely as a status symbol. When his economic status collapses, he sees them as surplus to requirements. The disappointed killer seeks to punish the family for not living up to his ideals of family life. The self-righteous killer destroys the family to exact revenge upon the mother in an act that he blames on her. This seems to be the Chris Watts one.
Yes.
Finally, the paranoid killer kills the family in what they imagine to be an attempt to protect them from something even worse. So that one, the paranoid killer seems to be the Josh Powell. That's what that seems to fall into.
Okay.
In half the cases, the killer lastly will kill themselves in a murder-suicide. If only the parents are killed, the case may be referred to as a parricide. Where all members of the family are killed, the crime may be referred to as family annihilation, which is what we're talking about in these cases. Many of these cases, crimes occur in August before school starts, which may delay detection and investigation. And according to former FBI profiler Candace DeLong, cases such as the Watts are rare because family annihilators usually commit suicide after the murders, an action that Christopher claimed to have contemplated out of guilt for his actions. So I brought that in to kind of explain the family annihilator a little bit. We've talked about family annihilators, but haven't really talked about the psychology behind it. And while it's a horrific thing and not studied very heavily, this is the why. It's not the brain trauma. It's not the abuse. It's not humiliation. It's one thing in which they're punishing the family for one thing or another.
Okay. So. Well, that makes a little more sense, but I mean, he's punishing the wife for threatening to take the kids away. So he kills the kids and the wife's already dead. Right.
And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a rational person, but
that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. These are obviously not rational people. And, so that is my story for today. And I hope I covered it well for my listeners that wanted to hear it.
Well, thank you so much for that story. That was gripping.
And unfortunately, I don't have anything positive to end on that. It was kind of hard to pick any one thing out to find some positivity. So unfortunately, today you're going to have to deal with me ending on a downer note.
Colorado is very nice in August.
Colorado is very nice in August. Okay. All right. Well, that'll take us to the end of yet another recording week. Very much appreciate the time today with our listeners. As always, you can find us on nerderyandmurdery.com, where you can find the links to our social media. You can also find the links to our emails, where if you'd like to send us requests, things you'd like to hear, tell us things you don't want to hear. We very much appreciate all of that. You can find the link to our merchandise on our page, where, as we said in the last couple episodes, we do have some new merch out there. So please do go check that out and show off your Nerdery and Murdery fandom. We did have one of our fans tell us that they were in a Walmart with one of our cups, and the person in the Walmart said, "Oh, I love those guys." So that's a really cool thing to go show off your fandom. If you do wish to donate to our show to help keep us going, please do visit our patron link that you can find on our webpage. We do appreciate all of our patrons.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. And the last thing is to please remember, if nothing else, please do leave us a review on iTunes. Leave a review and a rating. It only takes a minute, and it's completely free to you and does a lot to help us and help other people find our contact.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you again. So with that,
I have been Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Geoffrey with your Murdery.
Cue the music.